The sun dipped below the horizon as I parked my trailer in a secluded clearing deep in the Texas woods. After a hectic week filled with deadlines and responsibilities, I was eager for a weekend of peace and solitude. The air was thick with the scent of pine and earth, and the sound of rustling leaves filled the silence. I unhitched the trailer and took a deep breath. Feeling the weight of the world lift off my shoulders as the night descended, I set up camp, lighting a small fire outside the trailer. The flickering flames cast dancing shadows against the trees, creating an atmosphere that felt both cozy and unnerving. I settled into a folding chair, a cold drink in hand, and listened to the sounds of nature enveloping me. Crickets chirped, and the distant call of an owl echoed through the trees. It was everything I had hoped for, until I began to feel an unsettling sensation that I was being watched, and I brushed it off, attributing the feeling to my imagination. After all, I was alone in the woods, surrounded by the beauty of nature. I turned my attention to the fire, the warmth soothing against the cool night air. As the stars twinkled above, I felt a sense of peace wash over me, but it was short-lived. The rustling of leaves nearby broke the tranquility, and I turned to see a shadow dart between the trees. Just a deer, I muttered to myself, trying to quell the surge of anxiety that rose in my gut. But the feeling of being watched lingered, a whisper in the back of my mind that refused to fade. I decided to head into the trailer to get some rest, hoping the comfort of my small space would ease my unease. Inside, I locked the door and settled into bed, but sleep eluded me. The sounds of the forest outside felt amplified, each creak and rustle echoing in the silence. I pulled the covers tightly around me, trying to block out the noise. Just as I began to drift off, I heard a soft thud outside, followed by a low growl that sent a chill down my spine. My eyes flew open, heart racing as I strained to listen. That I lay still, the darkness closing in around me like a suffocating blanket. The growl came again, unmistakable and primal. Fear gripped me as I realized I wasn't alone. I quietly slipped out of bed, moving to the window, my heart pounding in my chest. The forest was dark, shadows shifting ominously, but I couldn't see anything through the glass. That I grabbed a flashlight from the table, my hands trembling as I clicked it on. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the area around my trailer. I scanned the trees, searching for any sign of movement, but there was nothing. Just the rustle of leaves and the distant call of the night. Get a grip, I whispered to myself, trying to calm my racing heart. After a few moments of silence, I returned to bed, trying to shake off the fear. I closed my eyes, willing myself to sleep, but the growls echoed in my mind. I tossed and turned, the sounds of the forest now feeling hostile and alive. It felt like the woods were holding their breath, waiting for something to happen. Around 3 a.m., I was jolted awake by a loud bang against the side of the trailer. My heart raced as I sat up, adrenaline surging through me. What was that? I whispered, the darkness pressing in around me. I grabbed the flashlight again, the beam trembling in my hand as I crept toward the door. That I opened it cautiously, the chill of the night air hitting me like a wall. The fire had burned low, casting long shadows that danced across the ground. I aimed the flashlight at the side of the trailer, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. Just as I was about to turn back inside, I caught sight of something moving in the distance, something large and dark lurking between the trees. "Hello?" I called out, my voice shaky. No response, just the sound of the wind rustling through the leaves. I felt a surge of panic as the figure shifted, stepping into the faint light. It was a creature unlike anything I had ever seen. Its eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and its form was twisted, a grotesque blend of animal and shadow. That I stumbled backward, fear gripping my heart as the creature stepped closer. Its growl echoed through the night, a sound that resonated deep within my bones. I turned to run, adrenaline surging through me as I dashed back into the trailer, slamming the door shut behind me. I locked it tightly, my breath coming in ragged gasps as I leaned against the wall, trying to make sense of what I had just seen. The creature scratched at the door, its claws scraping against the wood with a chilling intensity. I felt the walls closing in around me, the darkness pressing against the windows. My mind raced as I searched for anything that could help me. I fumbled for my phone, but it had no signal. I was completely cut off, trapped in this nightmare. Panic surged through me as the scratching grew louder, a relentless reminder that I was not alone. "What do you want?" I shouted, my voice trembling. The creature paused, and for a moment, the scratching stopped. I held my breath, hoping it would leave, but the silence was short-lived. The growl returned, deeper and more menacing, resonating through the walls that I knew I had to act. Gathering my courage, I grabbed the flashlight and moved to the back of the trailer, searching for a window. The creature's growl echoed outside, a haunting reminder of the danger lurking just beyond the walls. I found a small window and peeked through, my heart racing as I aimed the flashlight into the darkness. The beam illuminated the creature, and I felt a chill run down my spine. It was not just an animal. It was a reflection of something darker, a manifestation of the fears that had haunted me for years. Its eyes locked onto mine, and I felt a primal fear grip my heart. This was not just a nightmarish creature. It was a reminder of the darkness within myself that I stumbled back from the window, my mind racing as the creature continued to scratch at the door. The darkness had come alive, and I felt trapped in a nightmare of my own making. I could hear the whispers again, echoing through my mind, urging me to confront the creature and the darkness it represented. "Help us," they called, a haunting reminder of the fears I had buried deep within. That I took a deep breath, steeling myself against the terror that threatened to consume me. "I won't let you take me," I whispered, my voice trembling but resolute. I moved back to the door, heart pounding as I prepared to face the creature. "If you want me, you'll have to come in," I shouted, trying to project confidence despite the fear gripping my heart. The scratching stopped, and for a moment, the world fell silent. I felt the weight of the darkness pressing against me, but I stood firm, determined to confront the nightmare that had invaded my life. Just as I thought I had summoned the courage to face it, the creature let out a deafening roar, shaking the very foundations of the trailer. That I stumbled backward, the force of its voice reverberating through me. It was a sound filled with rage and sorrow, a manifestation of the fears I had tried to escape. I felt the walls closing in, the shadows creeping closer, but I knew I had to confront what lay within. "I see you," I shouted, my voice filled with determination. "You can't control me." In that moment, the creature paused, its form shifting and flickering like a flame. I could feel the darkness retreating, the whispers fading into the night. The shadows that had once felt suffocating now seemed to pull back, revealing a path forward. I could see the faint glow of dawn breaking through the trees, a reminder that light would always return to chase away the darkness. As the first rays of sunlight pierced through the woods, the creature let out one final growl before vanishing into the shadows. I stood there, breathless, the weight of the night lifting as I realized I had faced my fears and emerged stronger. I was no longer trapped in the darkness. I had found the light within myself. Days turned into weeks, but the memory of that night lingered like a shadow. I returned to the city, the experience etched into my mind as a reminder of the darkness that exists within us all. I often found myself reflecting on that night in the woods, a chilling reminder that fear can take on many forms, both outside and within. The forest held secrets I would never fully understand, but I knew that I had faced the darkness and emerged stronger. Each time I walked into the woods, I felt the echoes of that night, whispers of warning and wisdom that guided me forward. I had learned that light can always pierce the darkest of nights, and that confronting our fears is the first step toward healing. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the unknown. I encourage you to share your own fears and experiences with darkness. What lies beyond the veil of our reality? Let's explore these chilling questions together, for the nightmare never truly ends. The sun was setting over the dense trees of Massachusetts as I parked my trailer in a secluded clearing. After a hectic few months, I was eager for some solitude, a chance to disconnect from the chaos of everyday life. I stepped out, breathing in the crisp, pine-scented air, feeling a wave of relief wash over me. The forest was beautiful, with the golden light filtering through the leaves, creating a serene atmosphere. As I set up my campsite, I felt the tranquility of the woods wrap around me like a warm blanket. The sounds of nature filled the air, birds chirping, leaves rustling in the gentle breeze. I settled onto a folding chair outside the trailer, a cold drink in hand, and watched as the sun dipped below the horizon. The vibrant colors of the sky faded into deep blues and purples, and a sense of peace enveloped me. However, as darkness fell, a strange stillness crept into the forest. The chirping of the birds faded, replaced by an unsettling silence that sent a shiver down my spine. I dismissed it as a typical nighttime transition, but an instinctual dread began to settle in the pit of my stomach. I glanced around, half expecting to see something lurking in the shadows, but the night remained still that I decided to light a small fire outside, hoping it would chase away the growing unease. The flames flickered and danced, casting long shadows that twisted and turned around me. I pulled out my phone to check for service, but the signal was weak. No surprise there, I thought. I was deep in the woods, far from civilization. But as I sat there, I felt a nagging sensation that I was being watched as night fully enveloped the forest. I tried to shake off the feeling of unease, focusing instead on the crackling fire and the warmth it provided. I pulled out a book, hoping to lose myself in its pages, but the words blurred before my eyes as I glanced around the campsite. The shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally, coiling around the trees like dark tendrils. Just then, I heard a faint sound, a soft rustling coming from the edge of the clearing. I looked up, heart racing, but saw nothing. "It's probably just a raccoon," I whispered to myself, trying to dismiss the growing anxiety. I returned to my book, but the rustling grew louder, more persistent. I set the book down, feeling a mix of curiosity and fear that I stood up and moved toward the edge of the clearing, flashlight in hand, scanning the darkness for any sign of movement. The beam of light cut through the shadows, illuminating the trees, but nothing was there. Just as I turned to head back, I heard a low growl, a sound that froze me in place. My heart raced as I turned back toward the sound, the darkness closing in around me. "Hello?" I called, my voice trembling. The growl came again, louder this time, sending chills down my spine. I felt the primal instinct to run, but my feet felt rooted to the ground. Just then, a figure darted across my line of sight, a flash of movement that sent me stumbling backward. "What was that?" I gasped, panic flooding my senses that I rushed back to the trailer, locking the door behind me. I could hear the growling outside, echoing in the night. I fumbled for my phone, but it was still dead. I felt trapped, the walls of the trailer closing in around me as I realized I was entirely alone in this nightmare. The growling continued, a reminder that whatever was out there was just waiting for the right moment to strike. The sounds outside grew louder, the growling morphing into a chorus of unsettling noises, scratching, snapping branches, and whispering voices that seemed to swirl around the trailer. I pressed my back against the wall, trying to steady my breathing, but the fear clawed at me, threatening to overtake my mind. I glanced out of the small window, but the darkness obscured everything beyond the glow of my porch light. With trembling hands, I grabbed the flashlight and moved cautiously toward the window. I aimed the beam outside, scanning the area for any sign of the creature. As the light swept across the trees, I caught a glimpse of something large and dark lurking just beyond the edge of the clearing. A pair of glowing eyes staring back at me, watching, waiting. Denim wide breath caught in my throat as I stumbled back, panic surging through me. "What do you want?" I shouted, my voice breaking. The growling intensified, and I could see the outline of the creature moving closer, its shape shifting in the shadows. I felt the walls closing in, the darkness pressing against me. I had to escape, that I bolted to the door, heart racing as I fumbled with the lock. The growling grew louder, echoing in my ears as I finally managed to wrench the door open. I stepped outside into the cool night air, the fear propelling me forward. The shadows seemed to stretch and twist, closing in around me as I raced toward my truck. Just as I reached the vehicle, I heard a blood-curdling scream pierce the night, freezing me in my tracks. I turned back to see the creature, now fully visible, emerging from the shadows. It was unlike anything I had ever seen, a grotesque amalgamation of animal and darkness, its eyes burning with an unnatural light. Panic surged through my veins as I scrambled into my truck. Slamming the door behind me, I fumbled for the keys, my hands shaking as I tried to start the engine. The growling intensified outside, the creature circling my truck like a predator waiting for its prey. "Please, just start," I whispered, desperation clawing at my throat. Finally, the engine roared to life, and I felt a surge of relief as I threw the truck into gear. I slammed on the gas, tearing out of the clearing and onto the dirt road, leaving the trailer and the nightmare behind. But as I drove deeper into the woods, I could still feel the creature's presence lurking just outside my sight, its eyes watching from the shadows. The whispers returned, echoing in my mind, a haunting reminder of the darkness I had encountered. As I reached the main road, I glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the creature pursuing me. But the road behind was empty, the darkness swallowing everything in its wake. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, but the memory of that night would haunt me forever. The woods held secrets I could never fully understand, and I knew I had narrowly escaped something far more sinister. Days turned into weeks, but the echoes of that night lingered like a shadow. I tried to return to my normal life, but the fear remained, a constant reminder of the darkness that lurked just beyond the light. Each time I closed my eyes, I could still hear the growling and the whispers, a chilling reminder that I was never truly safe. I eventually learned that the area where I had camped held a dark history, stories of those who had ventured into the woods and never returned, tales of something ancient and malevolent lurking in the shadows. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had disturbed something that night, awakening a darkness that had long been dormant. As I lay in bed, the memories of that night flooded back, reminding me of the choices I had made and the darkness I had faced. The whispers never truly faded, a haunting reminder that the woods held secrets too deep to uncover. I knew that I would never return to those woods, but the scars of that night would remain with me forever. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the unknown. I encourage you to share your own fears and experiences with the darkness. What lies beyond the veil of our reality? Let's explore these chilling questions together, for the nightmare never truly ends. The sun was setting over the lush Pennsylvania forest as I parked my trailer in a secluded clearing. The air was fresh and crisp, filled with the earthy scent of pine needles and damp soil. My friend Jake hopped out, excitement radiating from him as he took in the surroundings. "This is exactly what we needed," he exclaimed, slapping me on the back. After a long week of work, we were eager for a weekend of adventure, free from the distractions of everyday life. We set up camp quickly, unloading our gear and preparing a small fire pit. The sky shifted from blue to hues of orange and pink, and I felt a wave of relaxation wash over me as we settled down with cold drinks in hand. As night fell, the forest transformed. The sounds of crickets and rustling leaves filled the air. We roasted marshmallows and shared stories, the fire crackling between us. But as the flames flickered, I noticed a strange stillness creeping into the woods. The laughter faded into an uneasy silence, and the shadows cast by the fire seemed to stretch and dance unnaturally. "Did you hear that?" Jake suddenly asked, his voice low. I turned to him, a chill running down my spine. "What do you mean?" I replied, trying to sound calm. He leaned closer, his expression serious. "There's something out there." I shook my head, dismissing his fears. "It's just the forest. It's probably a deer or something." But deep down, I felt a knot in my stomach, a primal instinct that warned me to be cautious. As the night wore on, we retired to the trailer, the warmth of the fire fading as the chill of the forest enveloped us. I tried to relax, but the oppressive silence outside grew heavier. I glanced out the window, the darkness looming like a thick fog. The shadows seemed to watch us, and I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that settled over me. Around midnight, I was jolted awake by a loud noise, a thud that echoed through the trailer. I sat up, heart racing, and glanced at Jake. He was still asleep, oblivious to the disturbance. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to calm down, and quietly got out of bed to investigate. I opened the door to the trailer, the cool night air hitting me like a wave. The forest was dark, the moon casting eerie shadows across the ground. I stepped outside, flashlight in hand, scanning the area for any sign of movement. "Hello," I called out, my voice trembling in the stillness. There was no response, just the rustling of leaves in the wind. I walked a few steps away from the trailer, the beam of my flashlight cutting through the darkness. The thud had come from somewhere nearby, but I couldn't pinpoint its source. Just as I was about to turn back, I spotted something glinting in the underbrush. Curiosity got the better of me, and I moved closer. As I bent down to investigate, I felt a cold breeze sweep through the clearing, sending a shiver down my spine. The glinting object was a small, rusted pendant, strange symbols etched into its surface. I picked it up, feeling a strange energy pulse through me, and suddenly, I heard a low growl coming from the shadows. Panic surged through me as I turned to face the sound, the flashlight beam shaking in my hand. The growl grew louder, more menacing, echoing through the night. I stumbled back, heart racing as I dropped the pendant. "Jake!" I shouted, fear spilling over into my voice. I dashed back toward the trailer, adrenaline pumping through my veins. Just as I reached the door, I heard Jake's voice behind me, groggy and confused. "What's going on?" He stepped out, rubbing his eyes, but before I could respond, the growl echoed again, closer this time. "Get inside," I yelled, urgency flooding my words. We scrambled into the trailer, locking the door behind us. I could hear the creature outside, scratching at the walls, its growl vibrating through the metal. The air felt charged with fear, and I glanced at Jake, whose expression mirrored my own terror. "What is that thing?" he whispered, eyes wide. I shook my head, trying to comprehend the situation. "I don't know, but we need to figure out what to do." The growling continued, relentless, as we huddled together, trying to make sense of the chaos. I searched for my phone, but it had no signal. The darkness surrounding us felt suffocating. "We can't stay here," I said, my voice trembling. "We need to find a way to escape." Just then, the scratching stopped, replaced by an eerie silence that hung heavily in the air. "Do you think it left?" Jake asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I strained to listen, but the silence felt oppressive. "I don't know," I replied, anxiety clawing at my throat. "We should wait a little longer before we try to leave." Minutes passed like hours, and just when I thought we might be safe, the trailer shook violently. The creature had returned, its growl echoing outside as it slammed against the side of the trailer. I felt a surge of panic as I grabbed the flashlight, my heart racing. "We have to get out of here," I shouted. With no other option, we flung open the door and bolted into the night, adrenaline pushing us forward. We ran through the trees, the flashlight beam bouncing wildly as we tried to navigate the darkness. The growling echoed behind us, a constant reminder that we were being hunted. "Where do we go?" Jake shouted, panic rising in his voice. "Follow me," I yelled, pushing through the brush, desperate to put distance between us and the creature. As we stumbled deeper into the forest, I felt the shadows closing in, the darkness swallowing us whole. Just when I thought we were lost, we burst into a small clearing illuminated by the moonlight. I could see the outline of my trailer in the distance, but it felt like a different world. "What do we do now?" Jake gasped, glancing around nervously. Before I could respond, the growling halted, and a chilling silence enveloped us. I turned to face the direction of the sound, and there it was. The creature stood just beyond the trees, its eyes glowing in the darkness. It was larger than I had imagined, its form twisted and grotesque, blending into the shadows that I in that moment. Time seemed to freeze. I could feel the weight of its gaze, a dark presence that threatened to consume us. The whispers returned, filling my mind with dread. "Help us," they begged, a haunting chorus echoing in the silence that we turned to run again. But the creature lunged, its growl shaking the very ground beneath us. I felt a surge of adrenaline as we sprinted back toward the trailer, desperate for safety. We reached the door and slammed it shut, locking it tightly. But the creature's presence loomed outside, and I could hear its breathing, heavy and primal. We were trapped, the darkness pressing in around us. I glanced at Jake, whose face was pale with fear. "What do we do now?" he whispered, panic rising in his voice. That as the night wore on, we realized that the forest held secrets too deep to uncover. The whispers faded, but the memory of that creature haunted us, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurked just beyond the light. We would never forget that night in the woods, a nightmare that would follow us long after we escaped. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the unknown. I encourage you to share your own fears and experiences with the shadows. What lies beyond the veil of our reality? Let's explore these chilling questions together, for the nightmare never truly ends. The sun dipped below the horizon as I parked my trailer in a secluded spot deep within the Texas woods. I had looked forward to this trip for weeks, a chance to escape the noise of everyday life and immerse myself in nature. As I set up camp, the sounds of the forest enveloped me, birds chirping, leaves rustling in the gentle breeze. Everything felt perfect as dusk settled in. I lit a small fire outside, its flickering light casting dancing shadows against the trees. I poured myself a drink and leaned back, breathing in the fresh air, feeling the weight of the world lift off my shoulders. But as the sun disappeared completely, an unsettling silence crept into the atmosphere. The chirping of the crickets faded, replaced by an eerie stillness that sent a shiver down my spine that I brushed off the feeling as paranoia and settled into my trailer for the night. The interior was cozy, with the warm glow of the overhead lights creating a familiar comfort. However, as I tried to relax, I couldn't shake the sensation that I was being watched. The shadows outside danced ominously, and I felt a chill creep into the air. Around midnight, I was jolted from my restless sleep by a loud thud against the side of the trailer. My heart raced as I sat up, straining to listen. "It's just the wind," I whispered to myself, trying to calm my pounding heart. But then, I heard it again, a series of soft thumps, followed by a low growl that echoed through the darkness that I froze, my mind racing as I tried to comprehend what was happening. "What the hell was that?" I muttered, adrenaline coursing through my veins. I quietly crept out of bed, grabbing my flashlight and moving cautiously to the door. The noises continued, growing louder, more insistent, and a knot tightened in my stomach that I opened the door slowly, the cool night air hitting me like a wave. I aimed the flashlight into the darkness, illuminating the trees surrounding my trailer. The woods were still, but I could feel a presence lurking just beyond the reach of the light. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling. No response, just the sound of my own heartbeat echoing in my ears. The low growl returned, this time closer, sending a jolt of fear through me. I stepped outside, trying to peer into the shadows, but my flashlight flickered ominously, the beam dimming as if the darkness were swallowing it whole. Panic surged within me as I turned back toward the trailer, shivering as I realized I was not alone. Suddenly, the flashlight went out completely, plunging me into darkness. I fumbled for the door, heart racing, but before I could reach it, I felt a chill sweep over me. The growl grew louder, reverberating through the trees, and I could sense something moving just beyond my field of vision. "Get inside!" I shouted at myself, scrambling back toward the trailer. As I slammed the door shut, I leaned against it, breathless and terrified. The growling continued outside, a constant reminder that whatever was out there was not friendly. I glanced around the trailer, looking for something, anything, that could protect me. The shadows felt alive, closing in around me, and I could feel the weight of fear pressing down. The growling turned into frantic scratching at the door, claws scraping against the metal with a chilling intensity. I felt my heart race as I scrambled for my phone, but it had no signal. I was completely cut off, trapped in this nightmare. "What do you want?" I shouted, my voice breaking as fear wrapped around me like a vice. The scratching stopped suddenly, replaced by an eerie silence that felt suffocating. I held my breath, straining to listen, but the darkness outside was oppressive. Just when I thought I might be safe, a loud crash echoed from the side of the trailer, making me jump. "No, no, no!" I gasped, backing away from the door that I knew I had to act. With trembling hands, I moved to the window, peering out into the night. My flashlight lay on the floor, and I could barely see anything. The forest loomed around me, shadows stretching into the inky blackness. I felt a surge of courage as I decided to grab the flashlight and check again. As I picked it up, I heard a whisper, a soft, chilling voice that seemed to come from the shadows. "Help us," it pleaded, sending a chill down my spine. I froze, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. My heart raced as the whispers grew louder, a chorus of voices echoing through the night. "Who are you?" I called out, my voice trembling. But the whispers only grew stronger, filling the air with a sense of urgency. "Help us, trapped." I felt a wave of despair wash over me, realizing that the forest held secrets too dark to uncover. I was no longer just facing my fears. I was confronting something far more sinister. The whispers enveloped me, swirling around like a dark storm, pulling me into their depths. I stumbled back, my mind racing as I tried to make sense of what was happening. "I can't help you," I shouted, desperation creeping into my voice. "Leave me alone." But the whispers only intensified, drowning out my thoughts. I felt the darkness pressing against me, wrapping around my throat like a noose. I turned to the door, wanting to escape, but the growling returned, more feral than before. I could feel whatever was outside closing in, its presence suffocating that I, in a moment of sheer panic, I grabbed the trailer keys and bolted for the door, heart pounding in my chest. I yanked it open and sprinted into the night, the cool air hitting me like a slap. I could hear the growling behind me, relentless and terrifying, urging me to run faster. That I stumbled through the underbrush, branches scratching in my arms as I pushed deeper into the darkness. I could hear the creature behind me, its breath hot on my neck, and I felt a primal fear take hold. I couldn't let it catch me. I had to find a way out. Finally, I burst into a small clearing illuminated by the moonlight. I glanced around, desperately searching for a way to escape. The growling paused, and I could feel the creature lurking just beyond the shadows. I took a deep breath, my heart racing as I scanned the area. I noticed a narrow path leading deeper into the woods. With no other option, I sprinted down the path, adrenaline coursing through my veins. The darkness felt alive, the whispers echoing in my mind as I pushed forward. I could hear the creature behind me, but I refused to look back. I had to keep moving as I ran. I felt the weight of the whispers lifting, the darkness receding as I reached the edge of the forest. I burst into an open field, the moonlight illuminating my escape. The growling faded into the distance, and I dropped to my knees, gasping for breath. Days turned into weeks, but the memory of that night haunted me like a ghost. I tried to return to normal life, but the whispers lingered in my mind, a constant reminder of the darkness that lurked just beyond the light. I could still hear the growling echoing in my dreams, and I often woke in a cold sweat, the fear gripping me tightly that I learned that the forest held a dark history. Stories of those who had wandered too far and never returned, tales of something ancient that preyed on the unsuspecting. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had disturbed something that night, awakening a darkness that had long been dormant. As I sat in silence, I couldn't help but wonder about the nature of fear and the unknown. What had I truly encountered in those woods? Were the whispers a warning or a call for help? I knew I would never return to that forest, but the scars of that night would remain with me forever. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the unknown. I encourage you to share your own fears and experiences with the shadows. What lies beyond the veil of our reality? Let's explore these chilling questions together, for the nightmare never truly ends. The late afternoon sun filtered through the dense trees as I parked my trailer at a secluded campsite in the heart of the Massachusetts woods. After a hectic week, I was eager to escape the chaos of city life and immerse myself in nature. The air was crisp and clean, filled with the earthy scent of pine and damp soil. I unhitched the trailer, feeling a sense of freedom wash over me. Setting up camp was a breeze. I unloaded my gear, lit a small fire, and settled into a folding chair outside, a cold drink in hand. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the vibrant colors of the sky faded to deep blues and purples, and a sense of peace enveloped me. But as night fell, an unsettling silence crept into the forest, wrapping around me like a shroud. As the darkness deepened, I noticed the sounds of the woods growing faint. The chirping of crickets dwindled, replaced by an eerie stillness that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. I brushed it off as paranoia, but the feeling of being watched lingered in the back of my mind. I decided to take a walk to shake off the unease, flashlight in hand. As I strolled along the narrow path, the shadows shifted around me, and I felt an odd sensation in the air. It was as if the forest itself was holding its breath. I turned back to my trailer, but just then, I spotted an old man sitting on a fallen log, his figure barely illuminated by the beam of my flashlight. The man was hunched over, his gray hair cascading down to his shoulders, and his clothes were tattered and worn. He looked up as I approached, his eyes glinting in the dim light. "Evening, traveler," he said, his voice raspy, yet oddly welcoming. I felt a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. "Hi there," I replied, trying to maintain a friendly demeanor. "Just exploring the area." He nodded slowly, studying me with an intensity that sent a shiver down my spine. "Many come here seeking peace, but the woods hold secrets," he said cryptically that I felt a chill run through me at his words. "What do you mean?" I asked, intrigued despite my instincts telling me to be cautious. The old man gestured toward the trees, his expression serious. "Not all who wander these woods return. The forest has its own way of keeping things hidden." I laughed nervously, trying to dismiss his ominous tone. "I'm sure it's just local legend," I said, but he didn't smile. Instead, he leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Beware of the shadows. They listen and they watch." His words hung in the air, heavy with foreboding. Feeling uncomfortable, I decided to excuse myself. "Thanks for the warning, but I should get back to my trailer." As I turned to leave, I felt his gaze pierce through me, and I glanced back one last time. The old man was still watching, his expression unreadable, that I hurried back to my trailer, the weight of his words lingering in my mind. I tried to shake off the unease, but as darkness settled in, I couldn't help but feel that something was off. The shadows outside seemed to grow thicker, and the forest felt alive, pulsing with an energy I couldn't quite grasp. Later that night, as I settled into bed, the sounds of the forest faded into an unsettling silence. I tried to sleep, but the old man's warning echoed in my mind. Just as I began to drift off, I was jolted awake by a soft tapping on the trailer wall. My heart raced as I sat up, straining to listen. "Is someone there?" I called out, my voice shaky. No response came, only the sound of the wind rustling the trees. I grabbed my flashlight, shining it toward the wall where I had heard the tapping. As the beam of light swept across the surface, I felt a chill run down my spine. The tapping continued, rhythmic and deliberate. I felt a surge of panic as I jumped out of bed and moved cautiously toward the door. "This isn't happening," I muttered, trying to convince myself it was just my imagination. But deep down, I could feel the tension building that I opened the door slowly, the cool night air hitting me like a slap. I aimed the flashlight into the darkness, scanning the area for any sign of movement. The forest was still, but I could feel a presence lurking just beyond the light. The shadows seemed to stretch and twist, and I felt an instinctual dread creeping into my gut. Suddenly, the old man appeared from the darkness, stepping out from behind a tree. "You shouldn't be out here," he said, his voice low and urgent. I felt my heart race as I stumbled back, feeling a mix of fear and confusion. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice trembling. He pointed toward the trees, his expression grave. "They're coming for you. The shadows are alive, and they hunger for the unwary." My mind raced as I tried to comprehend his words. "What do you mean?" I demanded, but he only shook his head, stepping closer. Before I could react, the atmosphere shifted. The night grew colder, and the shadows seemed to pulse with a life of their own. The old man's eyes widened in fear as he stepped back, glancing around as if he sensed something I couldn't see. "You have to leave now," he shouted. Panic surged through me as I turned to flee back to my trailer. But as I sprinted toward it, I felt the darkness closing in, the air thickening around me. The whispers returned, a chilling chorus that echoed in the night. Help us," they cried, a haunting reminder of the unseen terror lurking in the woods that I fumbled with the door of the trailer, my hands shaking as I tried to unlock it. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of voices pleading for release. Just as I managed to get inside, I slammed the door shut, locking it tightly. I leaned against the wall, gasping for breath as I tried to make sense of the chaos outside. The old man's warning echoed in my mind as I looked around the trailer, searching for something to defend myself with. The whispers turned into frantic cries, and I felt the shadows pressing against the walls, threatening to engulf me. I grabbed a flashlight and prepared to face whatever was outside. Suddenly, the trailer shook violently, and I could hear the creature outside, scratching at the walls with a chilling intensity. "Get away!" I shouted, adrenaline surging through me. The growling returned, a deep, primal sound that resonated through the metal of the trailer. I could feel the darkness closing in, and I knew I had to escape. With a surge of determination, I grabbed my keys and bolted for the door. I flung it open and stumbled outside, the cool night air hitting me like a wave. I could see the old man standing at the edge of the clearing, gesturing for me to follow. "Run," he shouted, and I didn't hesitate. I sprinted toward him, the shadows swirling around my feet as I raced into the forest. The growling behind me grew louder, and I could feel the darkness closing in, but I refused to look back. I had to escape, so we ran deeper into the woods, the old man leading the way. The whispers grew faint, but I could still feel the presence of the darkness lurking just beyond the trees. Finally, we stumbled into a small clearing illuminated by moonlight. I turned to the old man, breathless and terrified. "What was that thing?" I gasped, and he looked at me with a grave expression. "The forest holds secrets, dark ones. It feeds on fear, and those who wander too far may never return." The weight of his words settled over me like a shroud. I realized that I had narrowly escaped something ancient and malevolent. As dawn broke, the first rays of sunlight pierced through the trees, illuminating the path ahead. The shadows receded, but the memory of that night would haunt me forever. I learned that the woods of Massachusetts were filled with secrets, and I had encountered a darkness that would follow me long after I left. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the unknown. I encourage you to share your own fears and experiences with the shadows. What lies beyond the veil of our reality? Let's explore these chilling questions together, for the nightmare never truly ends.